Self-Persuasion versus Persuading Others, a study guide by Neville Goddard, Vernon Howard, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Today we're looking at where we invest our energy, how we misplace it, but also how we can claim it back. The question is, do we spend our time trying to persuade others, or do we spend more time trying to persuade ourselves? And this concept is based on quantum mechanics or thinking fourth dimensionally, but there's a huge emphasis on the art of speaking, right? As your five sensory experiences are a reflection of what's happening in the mind as a result of what's taking place in your inner speech. Therefore, when things are not going as you'd like to see them in your outer world experiences, the question is, do we find ourselves trying to convince others of our point of view, right? When things are not in alignment, or convince others of our position, or why we're correct and they're incorrect, or why we're the best person for a role if it comes to a job, or why someone should invest in us, or in a relationship dynamic. Maybe the question is, we're trying to convince people of why someone should be with us, or do we invest our energy in maintaining a positive concept of self, speaking to ourselves in a way that aligns with what we desire, regardless of what others think, holding a positive image of ourselves, regardless of what others are saying, right? And envisioning what we want for ourselves and assuming the feeling of that wish fulfilled, despite what our outer circumstances may reveal. As per Neville Goddard, and we're going to speak about Neville Goddard a lot in this study guide today, but as per Neville Goddard, we've been given two gifts, right? The gift of speech and the gift of mind, right? And the idea is we can be self-persuaded and align with our desires and experience this in our reality by using these two gifts, right? It's just about understanding the power of changing your concept of self, right? And the more you change yourself, the more that you'll see these changes in your outer world experiences and circumstances through people, places, and various circumstances, right? And the idea is we're sharing this today because when one becomes cognizant of this, they start to understand how they should speak to themselves. When you work with this information, you become more aware of what you're doing. And when you're aware, you can change your inner dialogue, right? You're aware that your inner dialogue gives birth to your imagination, and this influences your beliefs. And someone with a strong inner dialogue is really able to form a concept of themselves that just can't be derailed by other people's opinions of them, right? Because you're operating from a different space. You're operating from the laws of cause and effect and correspondence, and that you understand that you can withstand any resistance that you experience in your reality, and you can withstand it until you reach your desired destination. Because as long as you continue to persuade yourself, and as long as you continue to maintain an unwavering belief that you are what you desire to be, what you desire will soon come to fruition. So let's start with Neville's first quote. He says here, knowing all things are possible to him who believes, can you persuade yourself that although your reason and senses deny it, your assumption will make it so? Think of a time where perhaps you had a dream or a desire, but before that desire was brought to life, someone told you that your desire may not work. Perhaps what you desire would not receive the support from your family or from your community. So you suppressed it, maybe you buried it, and you replaced it with something that seemed more practical, more rational, and we have to understand that when we do this, we are convincing ourselves, or we could say we are persuading ourselves that what we desire cannot be accomplished, and we are allowing our external circumstances to really dictate this for us. Neville says, knowing all things are possible to him who believes, can you persuade yourself that although the reason and senses deny it, your assumptions will make it so? Everything we encounter, everything that we experience originates from desires and a belief, right? Nothing can be brought forth without one convincing themselves that they are capable and able and willing to bring that desire into reality. So when you have a desire to bring forth a specific end result, say or in a relationship or promotion or financial gain or a job or your ideal career, etc., we have to examine what our inner dialogue is with that particular experience that we want to attain. What are you saying to yourself? Do you say, or do we say to ourselves, yeah, I can believe that I can achieve this despite the fact that my current circumstances show no indication or no reflection that my desire will come to pass? Or do I assume that I can't achieve it? Do I take the circumstances in my external world that don't resemble what I desire as indication that I can't bring forth what I desire? Do I only see the gaps? Do I see the glass as half empty? Do I convince myself that my dream is too lofty or too delusional? Do I convince myself that I should place a limit on what I believe that I can achieve? Do I tell myself that because I can't see how this is going to be done, I should stop my pursuit? Do I say the unknown has too many uncertainties and unpredictabilities, so I should stay where I am because it's safer and it's more predictable? The false self is born out of fear. It's born out of doubt. It's born out of insecurity. And it gets us to live in our past. And those past beliefs create our future. As Joe Dispenza says, when we live in our familiar past, it creates our predictable future. So the discussion today is to really remind us that the key to what you want and the barriers and obstacles to what you want really start with your inner dialogue and what you believe, right? Because you create those barriers, right? You limit yourself from achieving your desires, right? As stated by Neville, all things are possible to him who believes, good and bad, right? As the saying goes, as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. Therefore, the facilitator, the key, the way to bring forth what you desire is your belief. And your belief is a reflection of your inner conversations. And it's such a simple concept, but it's challenging for many of us, right? And we've heard this before, right? As you change your concept of yourself, your world will change. Neville says, there's no other way to change this world. I am the way. It's my I amness, my consciousness is the way by which I change my world. As I change my concept of self, I change my world. Let every man be fully persuaded in his mind. When people think of change, they often think that in order to change, they need to change their external circumstances. And as a result, they spend less time on self. And in doing this for a certain amount of time, they come to a realization that despite their external circumstances, they may still be unhappy, right? And you often see this with people who haven't spent enough time with their self and haven't taken the time to understand themselves, right? You'll often find that their motivation is from a place of fear or from a false sense of security. And when you're stuck sometimes in life between fear and despair, between a rock and a hard place, you often seek the first pleasure response to relieve the pain. Now, what this will look like is often you'll see people maybe chasing a title, right? They're chasing the position, they're chasing more money because the new title is more prestigious than the old one. And as a result, it should make me happier. Or the new job with more money should bring more peace of mind. Or the new partner in the new relationship should make everything better because I'm no longer in the old relationship. But what we fail to realize is our world, your world, is always and will always resemble and reflect who and what you are inside unless you change your concept of self. Right now, this is also difficult for people to digest, so they often ignore it. And as a result, they find themselves in these fleeting pleasures, which look like these positions or situations that they don't like, but because they've convinced themselves that they need to be there, ironically, by doing more of what they didn't want to do, they become enslaved to these positions. You become enslaved to our jobs. And sometimes we become enslaved to our fears or stuck in these relationships. And it's like until we get tired of the cycle or the hamster wheel, we won't awaken to our higher consciousness and we won't see the root cause, nor will we see the freedom that we possess that lies within and not without. As Neville stated, there's no other way to change this world. My consciousness is the way that I change my world. But first, let every man be fully persuaded in his mind. We need to get to a place where we see that the prerequisite to change is an internal journey, not an external journey. And when we do this, we must persuade ourselves that we can achieve what we want to desire. And there are several techniques to self-persuasion. And one of those techniques is assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled via your inner conversations, or affirmations. There's mind movies, there's auto suggestions, there's timeline therapy, there's self-hypnosis. And through all these modalities and ways, you can really embody your heart desire until it becomes reality. It's really about shifting. You start to shift states. So you're moving from this mind, body, soul perspective. And as frequency, vibration, intention, and feelings change, you begin to attract people, places, and circumstances that reflect who you're becoming. And as you know, you attract who you are, not what you want. Fourth dimensionally, you start to see signs, symbols, and synchronicities that are leading you down the path towards what you desire. As stated by Neville, as soon as man assumes the feeling of his wish fulfilled, his fourth dimensional self finds ways for the attainment of this end, discovers methods for its realization. Therefore, what you realize is that what you see and feel in your outer world is revealed through our inner dialogue. And as we bring forth more awareness, we can shift the changes within, right? As we begin to persuade ourselves, we begin to rearrange our outer world experiences to match our inner speech, right? The key to this is persistence, right? Be persistent in what you say to yourself. And as long as you persist, the belief begins to solidify and takes form in your reality, right? And this is no different than what you're experiencing now, right? As your current reality is a result of past beliefs, past assumptions, past decisions, past feelings, past imaginations, right? So again, as we impress on our subconscious, we express on our outside world. So a really question is, how are you impressing on your subconscious? What are you saying to yourself? What are you thinking and how are you feeling? Because those thoughts, feelings, and dialogues will be impressed and expressed in your outer reality and projected into your experience. Neville said, you are moving into your desire. If you persist until you see exactly what you want to see, fix your position with the glue of feeling and remain there. It will be reflected on the screen of space, just as your world is now reflecting the fixed state from which you are viewing it. And this is, as I just indicated, your world is you projected outwards, and it's reflected in the people, places, and circumstances that surround you. As Neville stated, your world is now reflecting the fixed state from which you are viewing it. So if we want to transform it, we need to transform our inner dialogue, right? Your inner dialogue works in this suggestive manner by various means. Like I said, auto-suggestion, affirmation, which impresses on your subconscious and expresses in your outside world. Whatever we plant in our subconscious mind and nourish with repetition and emotion will one day become a reality. Earl Nightingale. All transformation is based on suggestion. And this can work only where you lay yourself completely open to an influence. Meaning whatever you desire to bring forth, you must align with that matching state. Now, how do we align with that state? Well, through persistent, through the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now, you ask how? Through your thoughts, suggestions. You influence yourself and you allow yourself to transform. That's how transformation truly begins, right? It's really, we have to claim our desires. And as you claim your desire, you hold the vision of what you want to see. You hold that vision in your mind's eye and in your imagination. And remember, inner dialogue is your imagination. And the more you persist, the more that vision takes form, right? It becomes reality through your suggestions, through your inner dialogues. This is a way of us planting the seed. We nurture it through persistence. And by nurturing it, we allow it to take form and grow. And this is a process. And as you begin to trust yourself, believe in yourself, persuade ourselves, you start to see how the world yields to your new concept of self, right? And because you've aligned with this true self and you've moved away from the false self, you will experience less frustration because you are truly in alignment. And when one is in alignment, you create with ease and flow. You are now embracing the principles of least action. So the principle of least action governs everything in physics, right? From the path of a planet to the path of a pulse of light, right? Least action is the minimum of energy multiplied by the minimum of time. Therefore, in moving from your present state to the state desired, you must use the minimum of energy to take the shortest possible time, right? As you see here, your journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. So to make the journey, you must employ the psychological equivalent of least action. And the psychological equivalent is mere assumption. So the principle of least action is talking about taking the path of least resistance to achieve your objective, right? And again, it's about using the minimum amount of action to achieve the maximum results. So in the case of moving towards your desires, remember our desires exist, and it's our assumptions that bring them into reality with ease and flow, right? It's not about taking the most amount of action, nor is it about utilizing the most amount of energy, right? And I think this is where oftentimes we go wrong, right? And I know that this is a departure from what we are familiar with, because we've often been led to believe that success is a result of hard work. And if you believe that money is a result of hard work and hard work alone, we need to perish the thought. Many people have a hard time with this because they generate money through their hard work. But, as the saying goes, if you believe that money is a result of hard work and hard work alone, perish the thought. This means that it's not merely hard work that brings you success. There are several ways to generate money and success, and what you believe you will experience. So if you believe that money is a result of ease and flow, i.e., least action, then this is what you experience, and this is what you will believe. And if you believe that money is the result of hard work, then this is what you will experience, right? It's all a matter of your beliefs and a matter of your inner dialogue and your inner speech, right? It's all a matter of what you believe and what you say to yourself. And what you believe and what you say to yourself is aligned with a state of being. As Neville said, always expressing a state, you identify yourself with it by saying, I am poor, I am rich, I am known, I am unknown, I am wanted, I am unwanted, right? This really implies the different beliefs that we have about ourselves. Those that identify with I am rich, those may identify with I am known. Those also may identify with life is difficult, right? But if you identify with I am rich, you're going to attract more abundance, more wealth into your ecosystem, right? When you claim yourself to be that and you align with the feeling of that, you start to attract what you believe that you are, not necessarily what you want. Same thing goes with those that say that life is difficult. My life is difficult. Things are challenging. It will be difficult, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're indicating the experience that you believe that you will have, but you're also identifying with that belief. You're fusing with that belief. So at a subconscious level, you've also fused with that feeling. So you may want a different experience. You may want more clients. You may want a better relationship. You may want more peace and abundance. But internally, you have the belief that life is difficult. Relationships are difficult. What I desire is difficult. That promotion is difficult. And when the belief and what you want are not in alignment, it's the belief that you'll experience, not necessarily what you want. Right? So as you see, it all begins with your concept of self and what you're expressing internally at a subconscious level, right? Because what you reap is what you sow, and what you sow is what you reap. So the question is, what are you sowing? What are you believing? Right? Neville says, sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an action and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Your circumstances, your experiences in people, places, and things are a direct reflection of the conversation with the mind. And if you don't like what you are becoming, change your inner conversation, because if you change your inner dialogue, your outer experiences will change. To change one's mind is a process. It's like self-hygiene. And like hygiene, you must be dedicated to it. Your identity and your thoughts are all connected. But how much time are we spending improving our thoughts? How much time are we spending on improving our inner speech? We all yearn for more growth. But how much time do we carve out each day, each month, each year for this personal growth? How much time do we spend in silence or to still one's mind and reflect and go within? How much time do we spend removing ourselves from the noise and outer conditions that are programming us and conditioning us, right? It's our attention must be developed and controlled and concentrated in order to change our concept of self, right? Right? Because we're trying to develop a new habit. And a new habit is like building a new muscle, growing new muscle. It takes time. For me, I meditate daily every morning, and I have my night routine as well, through affirmations and auto suggestion. At the beginning of this journey, it took more effort for me to maintain this. But what it was also fueling me was I was also under the belief that, these two gifts that we have, which are speech and mind, are something that can really transform our lives. And I wanted to use these gifts to my benefit because you have access to the key. It's like you have access to a key to get inside, and inside you have warmth and happiness and food and wealth and everything that you want. But we don't use the key. And that's the same thing with your gift of speech and mind. Your gift of speech and mind is the key to what you desire. It's your key to awakening. It's your key to consciousness. It's a key to shifting from where you are to where you truly want to be. So for me, by seeing those benefits alone, I really start to shift the priority and make room for that, like hygiene. And that's why I use the example of hygiene and brushing your teeth, because no matter how busy we are, we will always make time for personal hygiene, for brushing your teeth, for washing your hands, for taking a shower. We always make time for that. Our day doesn't start without that. Our day doesn't end without that. And it's the same idea with the self-care and meditation and affirmations and aligning with yourself and giving time for self. We have to carve out time for self if we want to be the best versions of myself. And for me, as I focused on myself, I began to see major shifts in my life. I also noticed that I was no longer invested in trivial things that could drain my energy, and I focused more on stillness. And I noticed that major stressors started to become less stressful. And when you begin to transform, you begin to realize how hypnotizing your world is. And if you're not awake to it, you won't know, because you don't know you're asleep when you're asleep. And it's only until you awake that you realize you were sleeping. And it's through the art of meditation, silence, knowing yourself, understanding self, and blocking out the noise that you really begin that process of awakening. It's not the outside world that deserves all my attention. The outside world is a mirror reflection. So I look in the mirror so I can see what I need to change within. I don't look at the mirror so I can change the mirror or break the mirror or readjust the mirror, right? It's the reflection of myself that I see in my outside world. So I want to talk about removing our attention from the outside world. And Neville says, if you and I would spend a few minutes every day in withdrawing our attention from the region of sensation and concentrating it on a visible state and remain faithful to this contemplation, feeling and sensing the reality of an invisible state, we would in time become aware of this greater world, this dimensionally larger world. The conscious mind is the director. It's the conductor of the orchestra, the aspect of ourselves that allows us to reflect on reality and consciously create how we want to live our lives. The subconscious mind, which is responsible for everything we bring forth, externalizes. It brings that sympathy to life on the stage of our lives. Now, as the conductor, you don't just simply read notes. You don't just look at what's happening in your external world and accept it as it is, right? But you envision what you want. You envision how the music is going to sound, how it's going to feel before you actually hear it. You have trust that the unseen will soon become seen, right? And as any good conductor will tell you, you don't just stop playing music because someone doesn't like your music. You remain faithful to what you choose to bring forth. In our experiences in our world, we don't just stop with what we desire. We maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled, despite what people say and despite what our outer world reveals, right? We assume that we are what we desire to be. And at the end of the day, assumptions awaken that which they affirm. So we need to spend time on what we desire, remain faithful to this feeling, regardless of what's occurring in our outside world. We need to feel it, touch it, taste it, be it, right? As Neville Goddard said, if we spend a few moments a day withdrawing our attention from the regions of sensation in our physical world, right? Those people, places, and circumstances that don't align with what we desire, and we concentrate on the invisible states, right? We concentrate our attention within with what we want, and we remain faithful to the feeling and sensation, we will become more aware of a greater world, meaning our world will start to transform. And we'll see that the path to the world that we want to reach and the destination that we desire is through our inner dialogue, is through our imagination, and is through maintaining the feeling of the wish fulfilled, right? We can no longer allow our immediate physical circumstances to dictate what we think we will experience in our future. We often overestimate things in the outside world. And when we do this, we put all our energy in that, and we underestimate the power of changing oneself and changing oneself within. When men and women help or hinder us, they only play the part that we, by our concept of self, wrote for them, right? They play it automatically, and they must play the parts they are playing because we are what we are. People, places, and circumstances are you objectified outwards, meaning your experiences in life, including those that you encounter, are direct reflections of who you are internally. It's, I think they say it on the Kardashians, like, it's your world and everyone is just living in it. And people play the parts that they play because you are who you are. We are who we are. Therefore, when you encounter someone who seems to be challenging or resistant to what you want, or when you encounter someone who is helpful, and understand that they reflect an aspect of you. And knowing this is powerful, because oftentimes when it comes to changing situations or changing people, we try to avoid them. Or if we encounter someone who is hindering us, we try to persuade them. But to try to change outer things without changing self will only result in frustration. Or if you avoid it, you'll only end up experiencing something similar in your future. When obstacles come out in your outer world and we try to just steer clear from it, or if we ended a relationship didn't end the way we want, and instead of dealing with ourselves internally, we just try to jump into another relationship. Or maybe we transition from one job, and instead of spending time to reflect, we just jump into another job. It's not to say that we can't do those things, but we also want to spend time internalizing. We want to spend time and understanding self. We want to spend time knowing ourselves. We want to spend time changing ourselves. Energetically, this space has opened up, and it's like, are we spending that time to look within? Or do we automatically knee-jerk response? We want to challenge the person that let us go, challenge the employer that had to let us go, challenge the person that let us go in a relationship, find a new relationship to make us happy. Because you can see energetically, the energy is going outside of you. When I need to speak to the employer, or why didn't I get that promotion? That energy is directed outwards. How come that person left me? That energy is directed outwards. Convincing someone that I'm the right person for a job, convincing someone you're the right person for the relationship, convincing someone you're the right person for the promotion, convincing someone that this is the better decision and their decision is wrong. It's an outward journey. And the question bears the question, how much of that journey is also delegated to go within? As you work on your inner self and persuade yourself, you will notice that things begin to align. And where you once saw obstacles, you begin to see opportunity. And as you change your perception of self, you yield the results that you want, because as you change the way you look at things, the outer world changes, right? You no longer feel threatened by your outer world. Neville says the imaginative man sees the outer world and all its happenings as projections of the inner world of imagination. To him, everything is a manifestation of the mental activity which goes on in man's imagination, without the senseless, reasonable man being aware of it. So he's saying that the imaginative man does not deny the reality of the senses of the outer world. And yes, this is absolutely correct, right? We mustn't deny what we sense, right? We must respect the experiences that we have in the outer world of our five senses. But we must also remember that what we experience in the outer world is the effect of the imaginative cause, which results from inner speech. And he who knows this understands that what he experiences in his outer worlds is a projection of his imagination. As a result, he's not reactive to his environment, but rather he uses the cues of his environment to change his inner dialogue. And as a result of changing his concept of self and what he imagines for himself, his outer world experiences begin to change, right? He's focused on the root cause now, which is self. And when you don't know this, you're resistant to the experiences that you have in life because you don't realize that you've chosen the conditions of your life. So you're more reactive to life. Anything that comes up, any challenges, any person that doesn't align with what you want, you're constantly reactive. You're on the effect side of things. But when you know this, it's very empowering. It's very empowering because then now you know that I am responsible for my experiences. I'm responsible for my stressors. I'm responsible for what I experience in the outside world. And there's no shame, there's no blame, there's no guilt around this. It's just an empowerment. We're stepping to this from a place of empowerment because now I can begin to work on what I need to work on so I can make the necessary changes. Now I can see my life projected outwards in people, places, and circumstances. And through those projections, I can identify what I should work on. And again, it's a matter of choice, but sometimes it's easier to blame the outside world for experiences. It's easier to blame my partner for the relationship going sour instead of blaming myself, because by blaming myself, I have to take some responsibility for that failed relationship. It's easy to blame my employer for not picking me for the promotion or for letting me go from the job and saying that they are not being fair or just than to blame myself for not being right for the position and being right for the role or doing what was required. But when we spend the time to go within and we reflect and we make the changes, we no longer see those things as obstacles, but they're reflecting to us perhaps on what we need to work on. They're reflecting to us on what we need to shift. They're reflecting to us that we need to get in more alignment. They're reflecting to us that we need to have more self-worth, that we need to come from a place of deservingness. But at the end of the day, we can use that information and go within and make the necessary changes so we truly experience what we desire in our world. But as long as we put our energy outward, we're going to constantly go outside. We'll have no investment in our internal world, but we will continue to receive the same challenges because we are the same people. I think it's just far too often we invest time and energy trying to change others' concepts of us, right? We invest time trying to correct those that we think that have wronged us, or we invest time trying to persuade others that we're right for this or we're right for that. And the truth is, to attempt to change circumstances before you change your imagined activities is to struggle against the very nature of things. As Vernon Howard stated, if you desire a change in your relationship at home or in business, you don't argue, you don't persuade them. People mistakenly assume that they would be happy if only this or that exterior condition would change. No man or woman is happy regardless of their exterior properties if he lives from his false self. And truly, it goes like this. If there is a problem that you have in your external world, man is unhappy because he lives from his false self. The technique, he honestly observes himself. The technique is not that he goes out in the external world and tries to change that person, convince that person, persuade that person, argue with that person. But the technique is he honestly observes himself. Honestly means that I'm not leading with the ego or the small self. Honestly means that, yes, I feel maybe slighted or upset, but I have the strength to go within and not blame what's sitting in front of me. And as a result, he finds freedom with his true self, right? It's the false self that sees the problem. It's the true self that sets you free. And then as a result, the new state is a happy man. This is the journey. This is the road, right? The roadmap is here in front of us. And it doesn't require us to put our attention into people, places, and circumstances. It requires us to put our attention from within. When you have a problem or when you feel that your outside world is not congruent with what you desire, and you feel that you need to change your outer world or convince others, you're reacting from the small self. And no amount of outer change will create peace for you. And for many of us, this is challenging to accept, as we feel that if someone is creating a challenge I should confront that person, but this is the action of the small self. The small self feels angry. The small self feels that it has to put energy outward to create its desires. Your energy flows where your attention goes. And if we put all our attention on outer things, we deplete our own resources. And as a result, we are constantly chasing things because we feel that the outer world has more value than our inner world. In our work environments, we often feel like we need to convince our colleagues when we really need to convince ourselves, or that we need to persuade our clients when we really need to persuade ourselves. When you shift and change, your circumstances shift and change because you are in the driver's seat. But if you remain blind to this and you try to change other people, your circumstances will continue to stay the same. They will remain where they are, and you would have completely missed the mark. And it's important for us to see that. Okay, so Vernon states, nothing can improve until we see the link between our psychological level and the things that happen to us. If we are secretly blaming people or events for problems, we miss the mark completely. There is a human cause for everything troublesome, and that cause is the very person who experiences the effect. I want to repeat this again because all our challenges, all our problems, all our misfortunes begin with this awakening. If you are secretly blaming people or events for our problems, we miss the mark completely. There is a human cause for everything troublesome, and that cause is the very person who experiences the effect, right? This is straight from the Kabbalion, cause and effect. Every effect has an equal cause, and every cause has its effect. And when you understand this, you understand that your external experiences are a direct correlation between who you are and what you experience. The concept that I want everyone to get out of this is, I must change if I want my experiences to change, right? As my awareness shifts and I follow my consciousness, I begin to see that there's only one cause. Whenever we have an unhappy experience with a person, we must not complain, like, why did you do this to me? Right? This is the first reaction almost everyone makes. However, it misses the mark entirely. Instead, you must ask, why did I react so painfully to what he did? This reaction brings us back to our responsibility for abandoning the ego-centered sensitivities. Then anyone can do anything to you, and there's still no pain, only peace and understanding. And this is from Vernon Howard. There's only one root cause. And when I know it's me, I can work on myself. Through the gifts of inner speech and thinking, I can change my worldly experiences. And if my reality is incongruent with what I desire, I can go within and make the necessary changes. And if I react unpleasantly to a situation that occurred, I also have line of sight on what within I need to work on, what needs my attention. And the more I do this, the more I begin to take my power back. And by doing so, we become empowered. And by doing so, we become conscious creators, and we no longer create on default. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again.